Hi folks, I'm Mike Murtis and you're watching GamerLogic.net. Today we're going to check out Blaster Master Zero 2 on the Nintendo Switch. So one of the very first games that I picked up for my Nintendo Switch when I got it was Blaster Master Zero. I was really impressed by Blaster Master Zero because it was essentially a remake of this game right here. Blaster Master on the NES, one of my all-time favorite NES titles. Very difficult, but very fun. Great music. A very big staple of my childhood as a game that I could not beat as a kid and eventually got back to in my later years and was able to defeat it. Inti Creates did an amazing job reconstructing Blaster Master, adding new elements to it, and giving this modern retro look to it, which just looked phenomenal. So imagine my surprise when I am catching up on episodes of Retronauts and out of nowhere they bring up that Blaster Master Zero 2 just came out. And I had to step back for a second here and go, wait, what? Did they say that's out? Is that correct? That can't be right. Because I would have been all over this game had I known that it was out. And it turns out this game came out back in March. And it was announced on a Nintendo Direct, and when it was announced on the Nintendo Direct, apparently it just came out, at least from what I understand. So I quickly found out about this, immediately headed to the Nintendo eShop and picked up Blaster Master Zero 2 for $10, $9.99, which isn't a bad deal at all for this game. And I was hoping getting into this game that I was going to get more of the same side-scrolling, tank blasting action along with the overhead Zelda clone-ish gameplay that you got from the original Blaster Master, as well as Blaster Master Zero. I'm very happy to report that if you were a fan of either of these games, you're absolutely going to love the sequel. The storyline essentially takes place right after the original Blaster Master Zero. After Jason and his droid pilot successfully defeat the big bad at the end of Blaster Master Zero, his droid pilot unfortunately gets infected with some sort of mutant virus. So Jason's goal in this game is to try to find a cure for her, and that means no longer just going to Earth and battling the evil mutants there. No, on this one we're going to be doing space travel, and that's the really cool thing about the exploration in Blaster Master Zero 2, is you're not just stuck on one location with different areas. Instead, you have a intergalactic map that you travel through these wormholes, you go on different planets, and there's also these subplanets where you can pick up additional items. It's very awesome and kind of almost reminds me of Blaster Master meets the exploration of like Mass Effect 2 or Mass Effect, for example. It's very fun. You don't have to do all of them. I highly recommend you do though, because overall it's going to make your journey easier. Now, you're introduced to this crazy planet that's just like falling apart when you first get to it, and it's kind of abstract when you first start playing it. You're like, man, I really hope they just have more of like the familiar looking worlds that I'm used to from the original Blaster Master and Blaster Master Zero. Thankfully, they're there. You have all sorts of stuff, from extremely bland looking planets to extremely colorful looking planets. Planets with amazing looking backgrounds, cool enemies, cool gimmicks on each stage. It's just a ton of fun from that regard. And there's so much variety in this game that you'll have no problem putting it down, picking it back up, and getting into it for another hour or two. I did complete the game. The game does have 2 endings, and overall it took me about 10 hours, I'll say, to probably go through everything, get all the items, and get the best ending possible in the game. There's no EX mode to it, unfortunately. It sounds like that may be coming down the line, but overall the control scheme is pretty good. Sophia the tank is very slippery at times. I think it depends a little bit on the controller you're using, of course. I was using an 8-bit Do SNES controller, which was the most familiar to me. she can slide around a bit. The jumps is not completely as precise as I'd like them to be compared to the original Blaster Master. And Jason out of his tank, man, they were very, very, very particular again about how far you can fall as Jason in this. He cannot survive a fall at all, so you have to be very careful when you're jumping around because just a small drop can absolutely kill him. And there's puzzles in this game that need you out of the tank in the side-scrolling areas where you really have to be on top of your game in order to progress, otherwise you die. Thankfully, the checkpoint system is pretty forgiving, but overall, it is a fun game. The overhead sections are just as fun, and the bosses in this, holy crap, is there a nice variety of bosses to this. The thing that really set Blaster Master Zero apart from the original game is fighting bosses, not just in the dungeon, but actually outside in Sofia. So you still have a really nice mix of that. I think for Blaster Master Zero 2, they focused a little bit more on the design of the enemies outside of the dungeons as opposed to inside, but still, overall, just a fantastic game. I still think the Blaster Master Zero is probably my favorite out of the Blaster Master series now, but this is definitely a sequel that's worth checking out. $10, you really can't go wrong with it. So if you're looking for a classic retro game, classic action platformer with the best of Zelda and the best of pretty much any side-scrolling Metroidvania out there, here you go, folks. Get the sequel to this. This is the original Blaster Master, Blaster Master Zero 2 from Inti Crates. Fantastic game. Pick it up, and thanks for watching.